Bookcase and Coffee presents Buzzing About Romance, a quick shot of romance.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Buzzing About Romance. On this episode of A Quick Shot of Romance, I am joined by podcast contributor Heather, and we are reviewing Conquered by Riley Edwards. Heather, do you want to read the synopsis from Goodreads?
Of course I do. Okay. Dylan Welsh was the last man standing until Sawyer Glasgow brought him to his knees. Dylan wasn't ready for Sawyer. He wasn't ready to confront the truth of his past. He wasn't ready to admit he's fallen in love with the sweet, sexy woman who captivated him from the moment he saw her. He is especially not prepared to face the hurt he's caused Sawyer, but to keep her, he must do all three. She's the right woman who came along at the wrong time, and after a night he can't remember, Dylan will stop at nothing to regain her trust. Not easy when Sawyer's family has betrayed her trust time and time again. Sawyer thought she'd finally landed the man of her dreams. She thought the night she'd spent with Dylan was the start of something special. Until Dylan says the wrong thing at the wrong time, and Sawyer retreats back into her private world, convinced that what her family has always said about her is true. She doesn't deserve love. Can Dylan open up to Sawyer about his past? Can she confide in him about her present? As Sawyer and Dylan fight to find their way to a future together, a deadly vendetta against a triple Canopy client grows. When Sawyer gets caught up in the danger, it's a race to save her before their dreams go up in flames.
Okay, so this book was released April 26th, 2022. The tropes are friends to lovers, one night stand, widow, found family, alpha hero, protector, and a slow burn. So the series, it is in the Triple Canopy series from Riley, and it is book number 6 in that series, and it is an interconnected series of standalones because it is the spinoff of a spinoff series.
Mm-hmm.
And then the put out percentage is 60%. So it's a slow burn, but like just barely, but it makes sense because of what they have to get over before they get to this point. But right. when it pops, hot damn.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, yeah, we'll get to it. But waiting, I did not feel like it was 60%, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like it.
No, and honestly,
there's a lot of the story like after that point too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and her books move like quickly, like mm-hmm. the storyline itself doesn't drag out. Like it's pretty snappy, like the timeline. Mm-hmm. But there's not a lot of like downtime in her books. Like it's not just her writing words to write words or like add a scene. Like every scene that you read in a book of hers, like it has purpose, it has meaning. And like even when her characters get into those soliloquies, she writes a great soliloquy, and like her characters, like you can have one character talk for 2 full pages. Like it is just dialogue, but it is meaningful and emotional, and it is a lot of times there's truth bombs like that are thrown out there that people mm-hmm. just are not expecting.
And you're like, wait, did I just read that? And then you have to go back. I would agree.
And you have to reread it because you're like, mm-hmm. is that what I just
right?
read?
Well, and you're right. I never feel like in Riley Edwards' books that she's one, like you said, writing to write. It just isn't words on a page. They mm-hmm. mean something. And there's no like lull. Like sometimes you get to a point where you're like, okay, are we gonna like move on from this? Mm-hmm. Or I never feel like that in her books.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the book itself. So when this book opens, first page, first sentence, like she's looking at a pregnancy test, and you're like, oh no, like oh yeah, what happened? So I'm not going to tell you what it says because I'm not going to let that one, I'm going to let that one ride. But you find out very quickly, like what happens there. But so we find out in the one night stand, like we discover mm-hmm. that Dylan called Sawyer by another name in the moment. And she is heartbroken because she, like, since they have met, like, she has fallen in love with him, like, fallen in love with him as a person. They become really good friends. Like, she is beyond devastated because, one, he does it, and two, he does not remember it happening.
Right. And just kind of to set this up for anybody that has never read the Triple Canopy series, Triple Canopy is like a private, like a security firm, or, you know, like a, and they're all, a lot of them are former military, and they're in a building, and within the building, she works for this company that all the wives and girlfriends, they're kind of tied to Triple Canopy. And so it's like they're this large group of friends. Dylan is a part of this friend group, and then Sawyer is a part of this friend group. And so while they don't work together, they work in the same building. So there's really no getting around him. I was like flabbergasted, and totally 100%. Like, so in the opening scene, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is good. Riley Edwards, like, and you don't want to put it down. And then, like, I was completely flabbergasted with Dylan, and I'm like, do I hate this man? Do I wait? Like, how do I feel about him? And so my question is what, because
Heather, this is Heather's first read in this series, so she is going into this one blind. Yes, the scene where she tells him that they slept together and he called her by another name happens in the previous book. Like, the guys are in the break room, like, just talking shit, being stupid, like, and like saying stuff. And Sawyer happens to walk in and basically throws down, like, no wonder, like, I don't remember the phrasing, but it was essentially like him saying, like, he just plays, which he did, but he doesn't anymore, which you learn about, like, as the book progresses. But she's like, oh, maybe that's why you called me by another name when you were inside of me.
Okay, because then I'm for sure going to need to go back. So I have read several of Riley Edwards' series. I have not read the Triple Canopy series. I have read the 707,
which is the original 4 where this series stems from.
And so I'm familiar with some of the characters, and like I know of them because they're the children of we call them the OGs, the original, the 707 original. So, but I picked up, and we sort of did this on purpose for the simple fact of, a lot of times authors will say this is a standalone, and we're not sure, is it a standalone? So like, how lost was I?
Yeah.
But I was like flabbergasted with Dylan. I was like, and I know, so I like know nothing of him, and I'm like, oh my God, do I like him? Do I not like him?
But here's the thing though, like, you're coming into this book not knowing anything, but I am coming into this book having read everything, and we still don't know a lot about Dylan. Like, Dylan, and that is something you learn throughout the book. Like, still, like, Dylan is a friend, but he holds himself apart from everybody. And there are some truth bombs that Quinn Walker Lancaster, who is her book is in The Next Generation, but she is Jasper Walker's daughter. And she like channels Jasper Walker in her lecture. It's not a lecture, but it's basically a lecture where she's like basically tells Dylan, like, we're your friends, but you don't open up. Like, you take a step back when we try to do that. Like, we want you to talk to us, but you set yourself aside. And he's like, I do, but she throws some truths down, like that they're family, and they want them to be family.
She does not mince words, like, at all, that girl. And so then, you know, Dylan has a set of issues, you know, like
he does.
And then Sawyer, like, on the outside, kind of just presents herself like a very put together, you know, kind of person. But man, her family is a well,
Train wreck?
they're a hot mess.
They're a train wreck. So I like to refer to them as a dumpster fire because her parents are the worst. Like
They're the literal worst.
The literal worst. But she has a brother, an older brother, and she has two sisters. And I can't remember if they are older or younger. Like she's in between them, but he is the oldest, and it's the three girls. And you can tell that the girls or the kids love each other. Like there are moments like in the story where she talks about things that happened, but all of them have been conditioned in this terrible environment that they don't know what to do. And it's like they've all kind of just been like going with the flow because their mom especially is the literal worst.
She has a serious mental health issue, and it was a very abusive home. And I think the way that Riley Edwards describes the abuse, it was phenomenally done. I mean, I think sometimes when you hear of somebody coming from an abusive home, or, you know, especially when you think about people that a lot of times you see it in the military, you know, in our romantic suspense, because kids turn 18 and they need to get out, and their out is the military. Yeah. And I think we oftentimes think of the physical abuse, but what you don't ever really think about is the emotional abuse. And so I think her family comes from like a middle class or an upper middle class family, but it's an abusive home.
Very. And it has affected like her relationships and even the way she treats her personal space. Like there are a couple things that happen surrounding that like that is her sanctuary, and she does not want people to enter it, and it throws her off balance when there's things that happen in her home. And like there's a scene that happens later in the book when her mom shows up, and there are things that happen. I don't want to spoil anything. So there's something that happens with her dad, and I'm not going to spoil that, but her mom ends up coming to the house. And one thing I love about Dylan is he wants to protect Sawyer with everything he has, but at the same time, like he lets is not a good term here, but he lets her speak for herself. He lets her like take charge in the moment. But when he knows like he has to pull her back to protect her more, like he does that. Like there's this line for him where he is willing to let her go to, because he knows that she needs that. But when she has like crossed the line where she can't do more, he is 100% in front of her, protecting her, engulfing her, and like in him.
Yeah, I mean, he is a really good example of like, I will stand behind you and then I will walk next to you. And when I need to, I'm going to stand in front of you to protect you from what you need to be protected from. And I think her siblings are all in survival mode. And so there was a point in time when she was describing her siblings and her siblings' spouses to Dylan, and he was putting it all together. And her sisters have their husbands not shelter, but they definitely protect. And
well, that's the thing, like she talks about her sisters and how like the one husband especially, like he lets the sister dictate what they do and how they do things, but the moment that things take a turn, like he cuts it off. Like he allows it to a certain point, because I think that sister's husband understands that she needs that. But the moment it gets to be too much for her, like he is there beside her, protecting her. And like that was the thing, like Sawyer never had that, because she even talks about like in past relationships, like she gets to a point and then like she'll start to rail on them about stupid stuff, because that's what she has witnessed. She also said time again.
She won't fight with them. Instead of fighting, she just ends it. She doesn't work through it. I think what really, it made me feel so bad for Sawyer that she had to navigate this all on her own. And it was something that she didn't talk about with her friends because she's embarrassed by it. But I think on the outside we're looking in and going, there's really nothing for you to be embarrassed about. But that's what happens in an abusive family.
But that's the thing. Like after this big blow up, like the OG moms are there, and there's a couple scenes with them that are amazing and wonderful, and I love them so much. Like I want to be them.
Right. Me
but
too.
There is a moment when Regan, who is with Carter, tells Sawyer, she's like, it is humiliating. It is embarrassing. She's like, but it is not you that should be humiliated or embarrassed. Like it is your mother who is creating this environment, who made the decision to treat her children in this way. And I thought that was extremely, like, Sawyer needed to hear those things, because that scene and the scene when they're at Dylan's house, which I'm not going to tell you what happens because you have to read it to get the full effect. Like those two scenes with the moms, like they are strong, emotional women who are independent, but they have their other half who will throw down for them without question. And they are mama bears, like nobody's business until you cross them. It's not like that one time where like Lily was like yelling at Ethan because she's like, I do not want your help right now.
Yeah, she like storms out of the house and he's like, I totally agree. I think they're terrific models for there's, like you said, they're mama bears, and like the men know well enough to be like, that's a mom thing, we're gonna stand back, but you think you're ever gonna mess with this woman, you are absolutely wrong.
Well, and like they talk about how Lily is from book 1 of the 707 series. Like that is where this entire like world was introduced. And like they even say like Lily is one of the sweetest people, easygoing people. But when you cross her or cross one of the kids that she has claimed, which every single kid that works at Triple Canopy has been claimed by the 707 family, whether they are blood or found, like she goes a little crazy, but in the best
really
way.
Great. I would agree. So, okay. So back to Dylan and Sawyer. So they, I feel like Dylan kind of, I don't want to say tricks her, but kind of is like, oh, let's go out for dinner. I mean, just sort of like all of a sudden they're like dating, and he's just like, we're doing this, girl. Like,
well, I don't think he tricks her more so than I think he's like, if I don't take these small steps, then I'm never going to get anywhere, because he recognized, like, yes, people had to open his eyes to like the chaos that he created. But like once they say something, like he recognizes that it is going to take an act of Congress to get Sawyer to trust him again, which so he takes her someplace, and it was a big misstep, but he did not. And I can see why he did it the way he did, but at the same time, like, you're such a dumbass, Dylan. You're a dumbass.
And so I had a different perspective, and maybe this is just me, but like in that scene where she kind of like was like, what the hell? I was like on Dylan's side. I'm sort of like, I mean, I'm introducing you to a friend of mine. Like, do you know what I mean?
But I think the reason that I understood where Sawyer was coming from, because he never said like, this is my friend Lana, like this is my friend. Like there was no prefacing, like there was no like, I'm taking you to my friend's restaurant. Like they just show up to this place, and this chick like is so excited, like super bubbly. And so like in Sawyer, like she talks about like how he was before they met, like, and she doesn't know if like since they've met he's still doing that. So like he like, and so I think it was a trigger for her, because like she already feels like she's not good enough. Like why would he be introducing her to somebody that because he doesn't, aside from the people they work with, like they don't know that he has other friends outside of them, because he doesn't talk about anything. So like he's so separate. So like I can understand her reasoning behind being on his side, but at the same time, like he's already like dug this like gully of chaos with her. Like he needs to be more open with the way he did stuff.
So the thing is, Dylan has a really He's a dirty talker.
He's so dirty.
And
So,
it is
so dirty.
Awesome.
Those scenes, like every time, it's like, ooh, what is he gonna say this time? Well, and it's very good.
She did a really great job on the steamy scenes, you guys. I mean, that's all I'm gonna say.
Well, and we will say,
and the mouth on him.
It doesn't pop until 60%, but it pops like really well, and it pops a decent amount after that.
I would agree. Totally, 100%.
She makes up for the 40% that you don't pop in.
Yeah, and speaking of Dylan, I really liked how she did not give us his story right away. Like he slowly gave us bits and pieces, and you kind of were putting things together, and then how he kind of slowly shares. I really liked that, and I think that's something that Riley does very well, and she has done it in a couple other books, and the way she does it is always done very, very well.
Well, and I think with him, like, he harbors so much guilt and so much frustration and so much, like, he wants to hide everything that happened. And like, Carter makes a statement at one point about how you have to let go of the past, because this is not a quote because I can't remember how he said it, but it's basically, if you don't let go of the past, you're never going to move forward with your future. Like, if you can't move past what has happened and accept things, then you are going to be stuck. And I think that was really important, because that's the thing. Like, Dylan, he is falling in love. Like honestly, like, there's a moment where he's like, I think I've always loved Sawyer, like, since I've met her. But at the same time, like, he holds on to his pain from his past so tightly, and he doesn't let anybody in. And I think that's the biggest part.
Right. I mean, so he's a widow. And none of the women knew that he was married before. Well, and I think at some point,
none of the guys knew until that scene happened in the last book either. That is when they found out also. So nobody knew. Like, aside from like the OGs who do like the background checks, like, they knew, but they didn't say anything because he never said anything. And so it's one of those situations where nobody in the entire company, none of like the family, aside from the OGs, knew that existed. And
so that just kind of shows you how closed off Dylan really was.
And they're all a little bit grumpy about it.
Yeah, they weren't. And I mean, the ladies were not about to give him any grace.
Well, but that was something too, that Sawyer never said anything about their night. Like, she never once said anything, because he was like, if she would have said something, the ladies would have been after me. And so he understands, like, she's trying to protect him, like, in her own way.
Right. She's not a vindictive person.
No.
She's not. And I think she has a lot of reason to probably be. But so one of the other things we've talked a lot about is that the friendships and families. So this whole family that has been created from the 707, it just makes me so happy, because those guys were, they were damaged heroes also. And so they worked hard for their HEA, and their women are amazing, like we've talked about. And just sort of the legacy that they've kind of carried on is just great.
Okay, so I'm going to do this one quote, and then we're going to move on to our questions. So this one point, like, there were actually a lot of points in this book that really stood out, but this one quote says, "I'd give Sawyer the rest of me, and she'd stand by me. She'd take on my demons, and I had no doubt she'd slay them. I could protect her from the craziness of her family, shield her from the hurt." I just love that, because like, he understands, like, when he is at this point saying this, like, he realizes, like, he can be open and honest with her. He can tell her everything, because she will not look down on him. She will talk through it with him. Like, she will understand why he felt the way he did, because she harbors a lot of pain and animosity and issues, like, from her family.
Yeah, they both come to the relationship with baggage, and it's different, but they work together and work together through their individual issues. Like they're a really great yin and yang, kind of like, you know, they balance each other out.
Yeah. Okay. So did you like this book?
Yes, I liked it a lot. So much. There were several storylines going, but I didn't really feel like lost at all in the story. There are a lot of characters, and I think you know, I'm going to reread it once I read the whole Triple Canopy series.
You'll catch some little nuances like in like the dynamics of the relationships, because that's something too, like in this series is like there are some people that are closer to others because of the reasoning and like where they came from, but like overall you didn't feel lost though, so that makes me happy.
And I would love a
she has a family tree on her website.
I'm gonna have to go download that then.
Okay. Yes, I love this book, and without pause, like I think this is one of Riley's best books that she has written, with the way that like this story played out. I actually emailed her after I read it. I was like, this is a good one. It was,
I would agree. It was very, very, very well written.
Okay, so who would typically like this book?
I think if you're a fan of suspense, there was a couple of suspense elements in it, and it was really well done. If you like a family and especially a found family and people all up in each other's business,
but in the best way,
this is for you. And if you kind of like damaged people finding their
footing
and the person that they belong with, this is for you.
Yeah, and this one actually was more like suspense light than some of her other books in this series because of the way the storyline played out. But I think that it was important with the background of both of them, that it was more light on the suspense than really heavy, because like she has a couple that are like pretty heavy on it, but this one was lighter.
Well, I think the suspense elements in this book were actually setting up a couple things coming, from what I can tell, that are coming up.
Okay, so would you recommend this book?
Yes, 100%, without hesitation.
Yeah, I recommend everything that Riley Edwards puts on a page. So, I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question. Yeah,
and I totally agree. I love Riley Edwards. I've read, multiple books of hers. Yeah, she's really great. She's a big backlist, so it takes some time to get through that if you are finding her now, but you should give her a read. Okay, so do you have a book you think we should review for a quick shot of romance? If you do, send us an email at thebees@bookcaseandcoffee.com, and we will take a look, and maybe the book that you want us to review will show up here. Thank you so much, Heather, for coming on and reviewing this book with me. Anytime. I love reading all the same books with you. So anytime, Leah, anytime. And until next time, happy reading, everybody.
Find us on Instagram at Buzzing About Romance or on Twitter at Buzzing Romance. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like to support us directly, join the Bookcase and Coffee Patreon and receive exclusive content only available to Patreon members. Check out bookcaseandcoffee.com for our on-the-shelf show notes.